All right, guys. So I wanted to quickly go over my top bets for the NFL 2023 draft. Personally, I don't bet the draft or anything like that, but looking at like the overall odds, it does give you kind of a good predictor tool to where some of these players are going to go on draft night, and I am going to give my opinion on all of these odds starting with the number one overall pick. It's pretty crazy. I've seen a lot of people kind of brag that they've gotten Bryce Young, plus 200 or plus 250 when it was looking like CJ Stroud was going to be the number one overall pick about a month ago. Now Bryce Young is all the way minus 2,000. So there's absolutely no value in betting Bryce Young. I do think there's tremendous value on CJ Stroud plus 1,000. Guys, let's remember a few things. Number one, Frank Reich has a quarterback that he likes. He likes the prototypical pocket passer, taller QB. Bryce Young is the same height as Kyler Murray. I'm not saying they're going to pick CJ Stroud because I do think that cognitive test score, if it was the 18th percentile, that's danger zone. It cannot be that low. It's very hard to justify picking him number one overall if that score was that bad. I know some people were saying that, oh, it was leaks from opposing teams and it was false, but the teams already know the actual score. Why would you leak a false score if the teams all know the truth? That doesn't make any sense. So I don't know if it's true or not. I will say when I saw that it was in the 18th percentile, I was like, oh, because I still like CJ Stroud possibly to be the number one overall pick. When Carolina made the massive trade, they traded multiple firsts. They traded DJ Moore. I believe they had in mind that they were drafting CJ Stroud. I know there's been a lot of negative things about him. I can't predict he's going to go number one overall, but I think it's just gotten so inflated. There still is a chance that CJ Stroud can go number one overall, and I always go back. Bryce Young is literally the same height as Kyler Murray. I understand Kyler Murray's had a decent career. He got a big contract, but that is a small quarterback, man. And obviously Kyler Murray weighs a lot more than Bryce Young as well. So, could we see a scenario that we thought we were going to see a month ago, which is CJ Stroud goes number one to Carolina, Bryce Young goes number two to Houston? That could very well, in my opinion, happen. I know these odds say something different, but it is going to be either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I see 0% chance Anthony Richardson is drafted number one, but it would be amazing TV, wouldn't it? And then same thing with Will Levis. It would be great TV, but it's just not going to happen. So it's going to be Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. There's no value on betting Bryce Young. I think there's great value on betting CJ Stroud, even with that bad test score. Maybe it's false. Maybe teams are putting out information. Frank Reich likes the bigger quarterbacks. I think there's been all this negative stuff about Stroud, but he played really well against Georgia. He's your prototypical pocket passer. Bryce Young is really good. I'm not saying he's not, but I do think there's just no value betting on him minus 2,000. The number two overall pick. So this is where it gets really interesting. I would say my bet here would probably be if I had to pick one, I'd say CJ Stroud plus 470 or Bryce Young plus 2,200. One of those two. Will Levis going number two, I just don't see it. It kind of seems like one of those fake rises like we've seen over the last 3 days. Oh, now suddenly it's Will Levis's turn to be the number two quarterback. I'm not buying it. Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson. If they seriously drafted if they pass on a quarterback and pass on Will Anderson, how does Tyree Wilson have better odds than Will Anderson? What are we doing? And I hate that they're both listed as linebackers. I just do not view those players as linebackers. They're pass rushers. They're defensive ends. That's another thing, but I guess it just depends if it's a 3-4 or a 4-3, but still, come on. Guys, to me, Houston, everyone's taking crazy pills. They're not gonna pass on a franchise quarterback. I know there's issues with CJ Stroud having the same agent as Deshaun Watson. That's been a storyline, but it's just more so speculation that would really keep them away from picking Stroud second. I just don't see it with Will Levis. I think they either draft CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, and there is a world, in my opinion, where CJ Stroud still goes number one, Bryce Young goes number two. This was talked about a month ago. There's been 0 snaps that have been played. It's just a bunch of fake reports. Let's be honest, guys. Either way, to me, Stroud and Young will be the first 2 picks. Quarterbacks win in this league. I understand there's a lot of Will Levis hype, but I do think it's a little bit late to the game, and they're trying to throw everyone off with that. Looking at the 3rd pick, so see, this is why it's so tough. I would just not advise betting any of this, because what's going to happen with the 3rd pick, you're going to get Arizona looking possibly to, it just depends. They either love Will Anderson enough to say, you know what, we're just going to stay at number 3, or what they could do, they could leverage the 3rd pick, trade with Indianapolis. The reason Indianapolis would trade up is because Indianapolis would have fear that a team lower than them would try and trade up and jump them to the number 3 spot. So you could be looking at Arizona trading back 1 spot to number 4 and still getting Will Anderson, while Indianapolis moves from 4 to 3, gives up an extra 3rd rounder or whatever, and drafts probably Will Levis. But with the 3rd overall pick, because it's probably going to get traded, I'll say either Will Anderson will go number 3 overall or Will Levis. It's going to be one of those 2 guys. I don't know where, Tyree Wilson at number 3. I don't see any chance of that. CJ Stroud at number 3. So that's the idea that CJ Stroud falls. Will Anderson might go number 2 if Houston wants to really go defense. I don't see that happening, but if it does, there's going to be definitely a bidding war for number 3, and a team I've seen a lot in mock drafts trading up, the Tennessee Titans, who apparently might want to get rid of Ryan Tannehill. So that there's a lot of options on the table. But with the number 3 pick, I see either Will Anderson going to Arizona if they stay at number 3. If they trade it, I see Indianapolis trading up from 4 to 3 to take Will Levis. Of course, another team might trade up. We don't know. I'm just guessing. And then the number 4 pick, you have to really love Will Levis in this spot. Plus 100. It seems like he's kind of Indianapolis's guy right now. Maybe things are different. Maybe they take Anthony Richardson, but I really do like Will Levis going to the Colts. But again, the issue is maybe they trade up from 4 to 3. That's why all these bets are kind of ridiculous. But other than that, at number 4, Will Levis, maybe if you want to have a galaxy brain, you could say Arizona wants to trade back from 3 to 4 and just take Will Anderson and you get him plus 1,000. I mean, that's pretty good value, but you would be banking on a trade back of 1 spot, which is kind of unlikely. So a lot at play here. And then the number 5 pick, so this is Seattle, and I've been seeing a lot of Anthony Richardson going to Seattle at number 5. I do not think Will Anderson will be on the board. I do not think the pick is going to be Tyree Wilson. I'm guessing he's going to fall a little bit. So at that point, is Seattle looking at it like, listen, we got Geno Smith on a 3-year contract, but we can get out of it at any point. We can bring in Anthony Richardson if all the other 3 quarterbacks are gone. He's obviously very raw. He needs a year on the bench. Sit him down, and that would be Anthony Richardson possibly going number 5 overall. That's just speculation by me. They could go a number of routes. They could go Paris Johnson Jr. for all I know, or Soronsky. But that's just kind of the situation with the number 5 overall pick. And then we do have kind of the first wide receiver drafted. So certainly I would say JSN. He's the most complete receiver in this draft class. I think JSN is the best receiver in this draft class. I think Jordan Addison is the second best. And then maybe Zay Flowers, but I don't like his size. Quentin Johnson, no way. I think Quentin Johnson falls out of the first round. Jalen Hyatt is just not complete. Josh Downs, probably a mid-second round guy. And Keyshawn Boutte I don't see probably a third round type receiver there. Looking at the first tight end, so I do think it's going to be Dalton Kincaid, but I'm not confident in it. It really depends if you want to play it safe or not. I think Michael Mayer gives you a much higher floor because he's a good blocker and he's more of a complete tight end. But Kincaid, in my opinion, has George Kittle-like potential, and I think he'll probably be drafted higher. Really, Washington, there's no way. Musgrave, Laporta. There are people that are saying maybe Sam Laporta out of Iowa goes in the first round. I guess we'll see. The first offensive lineman drafted, it's either, honestly, there's a sleeper here. Darnell Wright is a sleeper. What we've seen recently with the NFL draft, these huge offensive tackles seem to go really early, and Darnell Wright is one of those guys. He performed really well in the SEC, plus 600. I would say that's pretty good value there if you're looking maybe at Chicago at number 9, but I would personally take Paris Johnson Jr. I just think he's proved it 2 years now, as an offensive tackle. He's a former 5-star. He's really an elite guy. And also Peter Saransky is elite, but he might have to transition to guard due to the lack of overall height. So we'll have to see what happens there. You've also got Jones and Harrison. I don't see either one of those guys being the first offensive lineman drafted. The first defensive player drafted, Will Anderson is minus 200. There's just not good value there, but I certainly do think it'll be Will Anderson. I definitely don't think it'll be Tyree Wilson or Jalen Carter. People may say, oh, there's good value on Jalen Carter. I would not be surprised if Jalen Carter fell out of the top 10. He doesn't have the stats. He has a lot of red flags off the field. I would not draft Jalen Carter personally, and certainly I don't think he'll be drafted inside the top 5 in front of Will Anderson. But yeah, so it probably should be Will Anderson. First cornerback taken, I'm probably going to say Christian Gonzalez. He seems like the most complete corner. I would take Joey Porter Jr. first and probably Cam Smith second. I think Cam Smith's one of the more underrated corners in this draft class. But I would probably say Christian Gonzalez right now, somewhere like maybe number 6 to Detroit. I know Witherspoon has been mocked there a lot. You're really flipping a coin. Witherspoon is minus 200. The first linebacker taken, we've heard a lot recently about Jack Campbell, so I'd probably go Jack Campbell plus the 160 in front of Drew Sanders, probably towards the end of the first round. I really don't see another player having a chance. Trenton Simpson to me seems like a mid to late second round guy, so we will see there. And then the total numbers of quarterbacks drafted in round 1, I'm going to go over the 4.5. So, obviously Hendon Hooker seems to be kind of a fringe first round guy. If you do end up drafting him towards the end of the first round, instead of the second, you get that extra option 5th year on the rookie contract. So there's probably going to be a team that trades up and goes and gets him. That bet is just going to come down to whether someone decides to trade up or not. And then the total number of running backs drafted in the first round, it's going to be under 1.5. It'll be Bijan Robinson, and that'll be it. But, that's minus 550. The total numbers of tight ends drafted in round 1, I feel pretty strongly about under 2.5. It's minus 138. Total number of wide receivers drafted in round 1, 4.5. I'll say under. I just don't see the depth at the position for 5 first-round receivers in this draft class particularly. But that's just some different bets looking at the overall odds right now, about 4 days out from the 2023 NFL Draft. Guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.